Hello, welcome to this edition of Digital Badge Academy's webcast series. I'm Jim Daniels, your co-host, here along with fellow co-host David Leeser. And David, today we're going to be continuing our five-part series, focusing on part 4 of building out a valuable digital badging program.
Yeah, no, this is a really good one. Why don't you show us what we're going to talk about? Because I think that this is an area that a lot of people struggle with is figuring out what their needs are when it comes to a platform and some of these other considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look here, we can see the 5 phases as we define them, and correlates to our methodology that we follow at Digital Badge Academy when we work with clients. And phase 4 is all about implementation and setup. So this is where we're going to this is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. So everything leading up to this has all been about discovery and planning, some enablement related kinds of things, getting some frameworks in place, focusing on governance and operations. And so once we're through that part of the program, it then opens the door and allows us to move into actually rolling up the sleeves and moving this into something that's tangible in terms of platform and so forth.
Yeah, I mean the early part of it is putting everything on paper on here's the architecture for it. Now it's down to getting some of the tools and some of the programs actually launched, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and this is a, I don't want to say it's a heavy lift part of the methodology. If we've done everything correctly leading up to this point, this shouldn't be a heavy lift. And obviously, a lot of the things that get covered here, when we come in and work with clients, we have things that are in template format. We've already thought through these things. If it's a question of, for instance, evaluating digital badging platforms, we know exactly at this point what the client should be thinking about, what their specific needs and wants are, so we can help guide that process. And if we look here, there's really kind of 4 key pieces you can see here in the lower left hand corner. There's having a secure platform, right? There's ensuring that there is a strategy for rolling out clear communication about your badging program. There are obviously data privacy needs and requirements that have to be met, or compliance around that has to be addressed. And then accessible support. And by accessible support, what we're really referring to there is the ability to ensure that there are workflows and so forth in place to support both issuers and earners.
You know, when we started programs years ago, the badge platforms that were out there, there weren't that many of them. And now there are quite a few of them. And there are also, I think that the needs for a badge platform um, have changed as well. I mean, there's GDPR, there's a lot of things that you need to really think about, and security of data are really important.
Yeah, data security and data privacy have always been 2 really, really big considerations. But I mean, kind of just staying with that theme, though, you're talking about how there's a lot of different kinds of requirements that exist today. Nothing could be truer. And historically, I think we have looked at digital badging strictly through the lens of being a standards based sort of approach, platforms that are standards compliance. But we're seeing, in terms of platforms out on the market, we're seeing a lot of expansion in that space. And the expansion is coming from the standpoint of having platforms that can facilitate issuing of more than just badges, but even handle things like tokenization of credentials, creating NFTs, right? Things that live out on the blockchain in that form, breaking credentials down into different credential types, micro credentials, right? Even platforms that are looking at badges as being, one type uh, of what's the word I want to use here? Envelope, so to speak, that credentialing information could sit in. And so that expansion's particularly interesting. And I know, especially recently, we've had to actually deal with that kind of thing where we have clients who are not interested in investing in, say, a traditional badging platform, like there are several out on the market, but they're looking for expanded kind of capabilities. It might be, embedded AI type functionality to help them with creation of the actual badges. It might be, for
Pathways.
example, yeah, it could
Pathways.
be, pathways would be another, or they want emblems associated with their badges that are actually animated, right? Or they want to incorporate leaderboards and they're looking for robust capabilities, like rules engines and things like that to help facilitate a little bit more complex kind of decision making processes associated with issuing a digital credential. So that's that's one of the key considerations as part of implementation and setup. And then, of course, there's integration, right? With that comes along with your platform that you choose to issue badges and credentials, right? You have to consider that, what kind of LMS do you have? So that's one of the big pieces that we focus on in phase 4 of our methodology.
You really need to create a checklist of what your requirements are, and that's something, of course, we do. But really, you have to say what are the features and functionality. Obviously, there's table stakes. You have to have a level of security. You have to have that ease of use. It needs to be, like you said, the privacy, the data. But there's also other things as well, like you said, the integration, the reporting capabilities of it, the data migration. Can you use this data and export it out and make sense of it in your other systems? So all these different platforms major in different areas of this. So you really have to say, here's my list, here are the must-haves, and here are the things that are nice to haves.
Yeah, you brought up the reporting and analytics. That's obviously one of the big checklist items that comes with any platform. If you can't get data out of the system that you can evaluate and analyze to look for trends and patterns that can help inform you on how successful or unsuccessful a given credential is performing, then it's awfully hard to achieve the ultimate goal of having a high impact badging program. So yeah, if we just took badge issuing platform selection and integration, that in and of itself comes with a pretty healthy laundry list of things that have to be considered and evaluated and ultimately implemented.
I remember what you did, Jim, is you took data and you exported it out during the pandemic, and then you laid it on top of another data source, and then you literally could create a projection based on the data the two data sources you had on where the program is going to go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do remember doing that. It was, I think, I even wrote a blog on it, learning during lockdown or something to that effect. And it was a very telling set of data, and we were able to actually do some predictions around what would happen with the badging program from a scalability standpoint, based on the fact that suddenly all these working professionals around the world found themselves, locked down at home, not able to go into the office, and with a lot of business and commerce being shut down for a period of time, people had extra time on their hands. So one of the ways they filled that extra time was to go out and engage in learning activities, which is a pretty awesome thing to see. And of course, then that exposed people to what the potential of credentialing was. And I know after that, there was a big bubble, so to speak, a really, really like hockey stick kind of level increase in the number of badges being issued in the program we were looking after at the time. That did taper off some, but it never tapered off back to pre-pandemic or pre-lockdown levels. It ended up staying high, and that those data sets that we put together told us that would be the case. And it essentially is, what the outcome of that was, and we were able to plan for it and prepare for it. And sure enough, we saw that whole event probably lead to about a 20 to 25% increase in badge issuing volume, just because people they found out that they had access to not only all of this training, and in this particular case, it was training that a lot of which was free, but they were being recognized for their time investment and taking the time to build and grow their skills through the badging. So ultimately, they kept coming back after the fact. People that maybe weren't engaging very often prior to that now found themselves being far more engaged. So we talk a lot about badging driving engagement, and that's a lot of what is focused on leading up to phase 4 is the engagement. So obviously, we have to think about, again, looking at platform selection and things of that nature, the ability for those systems to be able to scale as the program grows.
And then, security and the data privacy, obviously the badge platform itself, is one area. And we talked about, you want to make sure that it's a secure platform, that nobody can hack into it, that there's the GDPR and the compliance with the privacy data. But there are other things to think about too, because once your program starts to mature, you're going to have other people issuing badges, perhaps even on your behalf, or you may want to create joint programs with other business partners or vendors or colleges or some other groups. So maybe, Jim, that's another area that you have to really think about. Can your system wall off certain parts of the data?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. And there are a number of badging programs out there where a company, or maybe it's a higher education institution, is working closely with some employer within some industry, and through a partnership, badges are being issued by the higher education institution on behalf of the employer. So maybe the employer, IBM's a good example. They have education programs that find their ways into the college and university system, right? And subsequently, there can be credentials that are issued there as well. So we refer to that as authorized issuing. I've built a badging program and I have all these things, and maybe elements of that program or what that badging represents can actually be franchised out to other, to other third parties. It might be a Coursera, right? Yeah, it might be Coursera, it might be edX, it might be Udemy, somebody like that that's delivering training on behalf of a company and subsequently issuing badges for completion of that training on behalf of these companies. So that has to be considered. And when we talk about security, security is not just making sure the data is secure and there's not data breaches and things like that, but it also relates to verification and validation of credentials. And that's a really, really important piece, right? Is making sure that that mechanism's in place so that the kind of trust you want to achieve by issuing these credentials is not compromised. And when it says it's verified, that's based on a mechanism that ensures that is truly the case. In data privacy, anybody that has worked around any kind of aspect of business that involves personal information on the part of individuals on a global basis, then you're familiar with GDPR, which is the global data privacy regulations at the European Union. They have a whole set of rules and laws and guidelines and regulations around that. And any company that does business internationally actually has to comply to that. And so badging, that enters into the picture in a pretty significant way for a lot of people's badging programs.
So, all these programs, badge programs are no different when you're implementing a program. Like there's people, processes, policies, and tools. So that kind of covers a little bit of the tools, but back to the processes, the next one, the support resources and the workflows. The process flows on things, you really have to map them out to make sure that you know who's on first, at any given time, and how the process is going to flow to make sure that people are well supported during the whole program.
Yeah, you really do. And when we talk support resources or support workflows, it's a support workflow could cover anything from how does someone within your organization come forward and make a suggestion to have a new type of badge offering created. There needs to be a support workflow in place to manage those kinds of requests. and to validate them, to vet them, and ultimately bring them into fruition. And if they meet all of the conditions that are in place from a governance and operations standpoint, ultimately to get them published and start issuing them. There's badge earners, right? There needs to be some support workflows for badge earners. Somebody might complete an activity and they're eligible for a badge. Maybe something glitched and they didn't get their badge, right? What is their uh, options for being able to reach out and get support? They say, hey, where's my badge? And the same thing for issuers. If an issuer is having any kind of challenges or needs that need to be addressed, there needs to be support flow workflows specific to those individuals as well. And then things like the authorized issuing we talked about, a moment ago, um, would represent yet another conduit that would require, some unique support workflows and things of that nature. I think you and I have probably seen just about every scenario under the sun related to support workflows and what kind of resources are needed around it. Interestingly enough, um, the number of warm bodies that you need around that is not significant at all. If you have your support strategy defined the right way, like a support portal, for instance, that different stakeholders can have access to, that has everything from FAQs to explaining, how to submit, a request to have a new badge created and published and issued, things of that nature. So again, we have all of that very well documented and templated, in the whole 9 yards, to make that a fairly straightforward process for clients that we work with.
Yeah, it's interesting because people think that this is a heavy lift, but once you get the process flows written down and what it takes, basically the training to do all these things or the guidance to do all these things, like you said, most of it's self-service, right? And
That's
these
right.
things are repeatable and pretty much people are going to be asking the same questions along the way. And, you just have a decision tree to make. And then, like you said, if you have a portal or if you have some sort of knowledge base, these answers are self-service.
Yeah, they really are. The overwhelming majority of it is self-service, and it's actually, well, first of all, the technology and just badging in general has become mature enough now. There's not a lot of things that really go wrong in a badging ecosystem, one that's been well thought out and thoughtfully implemented. Again, which is always top of mind for us when we're working with clients. And at the end of the day, yeah, it's just, you just need to make sure information is available to people when and where they need it to be able to answer their questions. And yes, there's sometimes a need for a human to actually intervene and help with something, but uh, it's pretty low maintenance kind of activities that fall into that category.
Information like so that really flows into the next category, the communications and the training that's
Mm-hmm.
needed. And I think that this is an area that I think people underestimate. I know that I certainly did when we were thinking about what a badge program is about, who cares about it, why they should care about it. Typically, people do it based on their own assumptions. Yeah, I've used this story before, but when we did the one program we worked on, I had just come off a marketing job, and all I could think about was the social media impressions, and that's what I started telling everybody. Well, the support people could care less about them social media impressions,
Right.
right? The sales people could care less about them. So you have to really start to break it down into a matrix to say, who are the people that are part of my ecosystem? What is the message that I need to get to them? How do I get it to them? When and all these other things. So literally, there's the badge issuers, there's the badge earners, there are the consumers or the business units, those groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to think about, so you break it down to those three different groups. Then what is it they care about? Then what's your message to them around what they care about, right?
Right. Exactly. And you also have it, and in some ways, there might even be a fourth pretty substantial stakeholder in all this, and that is, business executives. So if you, as somebody that maybe works in manages the L&D function of a business, and you've made the business case and you've got the funding for the program, in all likelihood, there's some commitments that have been made that this, in terms of what launching this badging program, what kind of benefits and value it's going to deliver back to the organization itself, right? So you've got some business stakeholders in the company that care about that, and you need to be prepared to communicate to them in a very succinct way, but but obviously in a way that shows that, yeah, this is delivering the value that we were looking for. So I'd kind of throw them into the mix from a communication
Yeah,
standpoint.
they're really the first ones when you think about it, because that's the
Yeah,
group that you have to sell it on. You have to show them and you have to show them the emotional and rational side of it. You have to show them, why they should care about this thing and get them emotionally, and then also show them the business side of it. What are the measurable impacts you're going to be able to give them,
right,
deliver?
right, right. And there will be plenty of measurable impacts that can be evaluated and packaged up and brought back to them. And again, thoughtful programs that are achieving success. It's a pretty easy process to go back and continue to justify the existence of those. So that's it's part. The communication is it's part marketing and it's part education, right? And which leads right into the training piece of it. There are some things related to a badging program where you do have to literally roll out some training to get people educated. Your issuers, for instance, if your issuers are going to have access to this platform and be issuing their own the badges that they're responsible for, this would be kind of like a distributed model. You've got different groups from within the business that all want to participate in the badging program, and so they're onboarded and they have to be trained on how to use the badging platform, to issue the badges that they want to issue, whether it's issuing them manually or even set up and so forth that exist around integration with platforms to facilitate automated issuing, or like the troubleshooting piece, the support piece, right? Issuers need to be prepared to support those badge earners that they have the direct relationship with. And so they need to be, again, intimately familiar with that platform. So there's training that happens there. There's training around the governance and the operational policies, just to get everybody familiar with it. And then in some cases, the training, and this is where training starts to spill over into a little bit of marketing, it's to help them understand this is why we have the program. This is why you should care. And here are all the benefits and the goodness and the value, that we expect to get out of this if we go forward in a really thoughtful way and we stay true to our governance and our operation frameworks and strategies. And we also, everybody participates and contributes over the long haul to help make the program better. So the communication and training kind of encompasses all of those things. And it's not a one and done. That's a continuous thing that's happening, right? Because if you come out
Yeah.
with a new constellation of badges from a new part of the business, that's got to be communicated to the target audiences to help them, make them aware that, hey, now you can earn a badge for doing X, Y, or Z. And here's what a badge is. And, here's what it can do for you. All these kinds of things have to be thought about. So it is kind of a constant cycle.
Yeah, and I think the one group that is most overlooked, I mean, I think a lot of people understand we need to talk to our stakeholders, we need to make sure we educate our earners, but or issuers rather, but the earners is a real problem. And we found that if you don't do this right, people just simply don't claim the badges, they don't share them on LinkedIn, they don't see the value in them. And I think that that really has to be done up front, right? I mean, that you really have to, at the beginning of the activity, let people know they're going to be earning a badge. Here's why they should care about it. And then I think you've gone as far as creating literally training for badge earners on what they should do next.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. Because it's one thing to make an earner aware of what the badge program is, why it exists, how they can benefit from it, how to claim their badges, and all those kinds of things. but they also need to know, okay, they're in all likelihood next steps. What do you do with that badge once you have it? Well, hey, you should share it up to your LinkedIn profile if you happen to have a LinkedIn profile. Most people do. Share it with your manager. Make them aware of what the time you've invested and your commitment to continue learning and education. All these kinds of collectively, and as you do this, each time you earn a badge, ultimately all that aggregates into a really clear message to people who have some say in your career mobility or your economic mobility, right? It shows them that you're invested. And so it's really important to accept those badges and share them and be celebrated for it. And of course, obviously they function as a motivation as well. So it basically tells your story, as a professional. And that's the difference. Historically, we've just had resumes to kind of tell our professional story. Now we've got this living, breathing, dynamic way of collecting these badges, which are just rich with metadata and detail about what you know and what you can do, what you've mastered, that also have pointers to additional things that you can go off and do. Maybe it's, I've completed this whole learning track over here. Maybe the next step is to go get certified. And the badge can inform you of that and how to go about taking that next step, as an example.
So that's phase 4. Make sure you share this with the people you know and get ready for phase 5.
Yeah, we'll be back with phase 5 in a week or two. And that's where we kind of wrap things up and talk about ultimately how you can come back and measure success of your program. So that'll be an interesting one. So with that, we'll call this a wrap, and we'll see people on the next installment.
Thank you.
Are you looking to launch a digital badging program or improve an existing one? Look no further than Digital Badge Academy. Our highly popular online masterclass will help you gain the skills and insights necessary to achieve success. Enroll now and start learning today.